Hello there, and welcome back to BioNexus Health Podcast series. Today, I'm going to continue answering some of the questions. And one very important question that seems to come up a lot is die-off reactions. How to handle die-off reactions? What is Herxheimer reactions, detox reactions, and die-off reactions? So detox reactions we can talk about briefly, but mostly this will be about die-off reactions. I remember touching upon this in some detail, not complete detail, but in some detail in my Pandas Flare-Up podcast. So that is something, another podcast that would be important to watch. But let's begin, shall we?
Welcome to the BioNexus Health Podcast with Dr. Jodie A. Dashore, who holds a PhD in integrative medicine, is board certified in integrative pediatrics, an internationally recognized pioneering clinician, and author. And now here's your host of BioNexus Health Podcast, Dr. Jodie A. Dashore.
It'll be best to give you a couple case examples, a couple case studies that happened recently. And I also mentioned a few case studies in my last podcast with PANS flare-up, how to handle a pandas flare-up. So let's see, what is die-off reaction, right? So die-off reaction or Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction is literally that. It's a die-off reaction. But what is dying off? The bacteria. The bacteria, viruses, parasites, yeast, fungi. So whatever infection is being tackled in the protocol, as you know, BioNexus protocol is a complete herbal plant-based protocol. The herbs are so purely handmade. They are, many of you know, the sheer quality that goes behind BioNexus herbals. They were created for my son and my family, and we continue to use them for ourselves and as well as for our patients. And everyone in the BioNexus family gets the exact same quality with the herbals. So the herbals do what they are supposed to do, and oftentimes, more often than not, you will see a die-off reaction, right? Meaning whatever we are trying to eliminate is being eliminated. So one parent actually mentioned that, so Dr. Dashore, die-off reaction is actually good news then, right? So we know that something's working. Well, yes, exactly. So we know that we are on the right track when you see die-off reactions. But die-off reactions can be hard to watch. They are not very pleasant to experience either, especially for children, especially when you're watching, symptoms come back in your children. It becomes hard to accept, hard to watch. I've been through that myself. I'll give you Brian's example as well as we proceed. So why does this happen? This happens because, and again, if you would like to search online for Jarisch-Herxheimer reactions, the scientist, right, Herxheimer, after who the reaction is named, has a lot of information out there. There are articles about Herxheimer reactions for those seeking additional in-depth information. I'm just going to stay within my time frame on this and give you some useful examples and strategies how to get through this. All right. So as the bacteria, or as, let's say, make it a broader umbrella and say microbes, right? So as the microorganisms are dying off using antimicrobial herbals, that's when they release toxins. Now, when these toxins are released, the very same toxins that are causing the symptoms when the bacteria are alive, because the bacteria, I keep saying bacteria, but it is a wide variety of microorganisms that we see in especially in children with autism, when we are looking at underlying comorbid issues, if there are patients with Lyme disease, co-infections, these co-infections can be many. So there are various microorganisms that could be causing a die-off or Herxheimer reaction. So when these toxins are released, they will give you the same symptoms that an infection would give you, because the toxins belong to the same microorganisms, don't they? So the symptoms will look similar to a flare-up, right? But you know that if you know that you have not been re-exposed, for example, with Brian, we had him at home. It's a safe environment. There was no triggers, no exposures, and we changed his medication. Either we changed the herbal or we increased the droppage of the herbal. That is when we saw the Herxheimer reaction. So we know that that is the only variable at play here, and that it is a die-off reaction. So that is what die-off reactions are. Now let's take a little pause and talk very briefly about detox reactions, okay? So detox reactions are when you start detoxification, like for example, when you start binders, when you start organ support for liver, lymph, and your kidneys, or adrenal support, mitochondrial support. This is all organ support. Sometimes, due to an overload of toxins, starting with a low dose, even when starting with a low dose, people will experience an intensification of symptoms, right? So one is intensification, one is called as a die-off reaction. Just to keep it kind of separate, right? But in essence, very similar stuff can happen. So as you know that, many of you know, not everybody, of course, that BioNexus protocol is carefully customized for each patient. So your buildup with various nutritional products, with various binders and organ support products and herbals that reduce inflammation, all of this comes way before we start any antimicrobials, correct? So keep in mind that when you're starting your binders, there's no antimicrobial in play yet, right? Usually this happens, because we are either waiting on labs or genetic testing and additional tests to determine exactly what's going on with the patient, so we can customize the protocol, correct? So we can, customize a good anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial herbal protocol. So it is bio-individualized and fully targeted. So we actually start with nutrition. We have, as I mentioned, binders and step-by-step process. So when you're at the binder stage, and you're always advised to start with a pinch. Most patients I see are quite sensitive, so it is best to err on the side of caution. Starting with a pinch of the binder, you might see some intensification of your symptoms. It is best to push through since you are already building up. I mean, if you would like to stop for a few days and restart, that's fine too. But I think, taking some time off, dedicating some time to yourself, and trying to push through any detoxification symptoms is the best way. Remember to hydrate, remember to get plenty of rest. So this would be a detox reaction, which can happen when you start liver, lymph, kidney, organ support, or when you start any kind of binders, all right? Always start low and slow. Okay, another little pause here. So let's go back to Herxheimer reactions now, right? So we just spoke a little bit about detox. So that's done with. If anyone would like to know a little bit more about detoxification reactions, or you feel that, it needs to be covered a little bit more in detail, by all means, send me the question. All questions are welcome. If you go on the BioNexus website, on the homepage, there is an option for anybody watching to send in questions. Okay. So let us begin with some examples, right? The other day, I got a call from a mom in panic, and actually, it has been a few patients that have called with, similar issues happening with their child. Once post-COVID lockdown, school started again. It was online for a while, and now school has started. So going on the school bus, going back to school, being exposed to other children. I've been getting a lot of similar problems happening in children. One is, and these symptoms are excessive urination. My child is peeing a lot, almost, every half an hour, every hour he has to go. It's becoming very problematic in school. Teachers are complaining. He's not able to sleep. He just, he needs to urinate a lot. So this, they talk about a sudden onset. Additional symptoms that go with this excessive urination. Of course, sometimes it can only be excessive urination because remember, this child is doing a full BioNexus protocol. So excessive urination, anxiety, separation anxiety. One mom said that he has started coming into mom and dad's bedroom and just wants to, sleep with mom and dad again because he doesn't want to stay, in his room anymore. So this all goes with the excessive urination. Then a separation anxiety, as I mentioned. Then we have sleep issues. Then we have unexplained dry cough, causing sleep issues as well. Additional symptoms would be aggression. The obsessive compulsive behavior has increased, opening and closing of doors. Sensory issues have increased. It could be dietary intolerances. That Dr. Dashore, my child was really eating well on the specific diet that you prescribed and growing and doing well. And now, other than all of these symptoms, the being a picky eater, which we had overcome, or we thought we had overcome, that picky eating has started again. Self-injurious behaviors, head banging. There is one child who makes a fist and hammers the floor. So there are various symptoms that happen, especially if a child is nonverbal, right? And I am emphasizing on children because it's important to understand what happens with children, especially if children have autism. That is, especially if children have autism, and if it is nonverbal autism, then sometimes the aggression, the self-injurious behaviors, they increase greatly because the child is trying to explain something to you, trying to express, and is unable to because of, lack of expressive language. This kind of flare-up, this kind of Herxheimer reactions can happen in children who don't have autism, but just have PANS and PANDAS, okay? Now let's talk about Herxheimer reactions in adults. Those can happen too as well, right? So the symptoms come back. Now in children and in adults with PANS, PANDAS, as well as Lyme disease, mold biotoxin illness, Herxheimer reactions can be your own symptoms getting worse, right? So whatever your symptoms are, fatigue, aches and pains, body aches and pains, joint aches and pains, breathing challenges, always having to take a deep breath, anxiety, palpitations, vertigo, headaches, visual disturbances, nosebleeds, there are so many symptoms, arthritic issues in the fingers and the toes, difficulty with the flexibility, difficulty with endurance, difficulty with the exercise tolerance. So all of these symptoms can fall under the umbrella of Herxheimer reactions. Okay. Now, I'm focusing on pediatric case studies, and I'm focusing on children with autism case studies. But when it comes to how to handle a Herxheimer reaction, the umbrella is wide. So it would be applicable to all age groups, right? Okay. So what did, most parents, now here it is, the number one mistake that people make, parents and people, the number one mistake that they make in their panic and anxiety because there is Herxheimer reactions or die-off reactions is they assume it has got something to do with their protocol or their regimen. Okay. Now, it may look like a die-off reaction, but is it really a die-off reaction? How do you know if it is really a die-off reaction? So the hallmark of a die-off reaction would be it usually starts within an hour to a few hours after you have started a new antimicrobial or you have added the antimicrobial section in the BioNexus protocol for the first time. Even if you have just started with 1 drop each, die-off reactions can be seen, but it needs to be logical. You need to have started or changed an antimicrobial herbal, correct? Makes sense, right? Because if you haven't done that, then what's dying off? Nothing's dying off at that point. So please don't make that mistake, because it's very important to understand exactly what's going on so we can help you, right? Okay. Second would be if you have increased the dosage of any antimicrobial. You know how I tell you to slowly increase the drops, start with 1 drop and then slowly build up to 2 drops, 3 drops, and start with once a day and slowly build up to 3 times a day. Now, if you are in the process of doing that and during that process, you start seeing any kind of die-off reactions, right? And any kind of symptom intensification, then that makes logical sense that you are having die-off reactions, right? Now, usually, again, I speak from personal experience as well as my over a decade of clinical experience. That is where this information is coming from. So what I have seen all along is that die-off reactions usually happen within the hour, within a couple hours after consuming your herbal tonic, herbal cocktail, your antimicrobial herbals, okay? Now, it is not possible to see a die-off reaction. Say you added in something new on a Monday. Monday, okay, I'm adding in TIS blend, all right? And you started with 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 time a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 1 drop, 1 time a day. And then suddenly Thursday, you start seeing, you start feeling symptoms and what have you. It is most probably not the herbal, okay? It usually isn't the herbal. You need to look for, have you been exposed to something? Did you go into the store? Were you exposed to mold, right? Because a rise in inflammation can cause a flare-up, and a flare-up can be mistaken as a die-off reaction. And it is important to identify a flare-up so you can identify the trigger, like what caused the flare-up, so that you don't do it again, right? So you find a solution for that. Because mistakenly thinking that a flare-up or a re-exposure is a die-off reaction is a huge mistake. All right, so this is why I say that the number one mistake people make is they assume it is something on the protocol. I've even had people assume that something as, something innocuous as minerals and magnesium, multivitamin, a very basic non-methylated mild multivitamin, a very mild enzyme can cause die-off reactions. Is it possible? Well, anything's possible, but that's not what I have seen in my practice because, BioNexus protocols are very individualized and customized, and it is absolutely the goal to minimize any kind of reactivity. So it is highly improbable that you would get any kind of a die-off reaction from innocuous supplements, correct? It's usually the antimicrobial. So it's very, very important to understand this. Not after days. The maximum genuine Herxheimer die-off reaction I have seen is within 24 hours. All right, so you wake up next day morning and then, you see an increase in achiness, increase in fatigue, decreased concentration, headaches, or a little bit of aggressiveness goes up. It could go up a lot as well, depending on how high of a microbial load you have, correct? I mean, sometimes, little children with autism can be fully loaded with a lot of microbial issues. And even a couple drops brings about a huge Herxheimer reaction, all right? One example, I'll give you Brian's example, right? We were seeing a naturopathic practitioner, and during muscle testing, the practitioner decided to try cryptolepis. Brian was 7 years old then. So we, instead of using the cryptolepis bottle on the side or having Brian hold it in his hand, the methodology used for a deeper exploration using muscle testing was to give Brian, I even remember the droppage, was 6 drops of cryptolepis directly under the tongue in the mouth. And Brian was used to herbals, so that really wasn't a problem. But, we did, the practitioner did six drops of cryptolepis directly under the tongue. And we actually determined the dosage of the cryptolepis to be 6 drops. That's how 6 drops, like I think he was adding 1 drop at a time, and that's how we arrived at 6 drops. So great, right? We knew that crypto would be important for cyst busting, as well as the next step of his treatment. Wouldn't you know it? My goodness, this was within a couple hours from the practitioner's clinic. We returned back to our hotel room because we had traveled abroad for this. But when we returned back to the hotel, Brian started limping again. He was unable to walk, excruciating pain in his hips and pelvis again. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, he had, begun to improve, and he started becoming very irritable, started getting gut aches and pains. And then that evening, he actually passed a few worms. It was scary. It was scary for myself because I was still learning at that point. I was mentoring this practitioner as well to gain more knowledge. But next day morning, luckily enough, we were due back at the clinic because we usually went for a week or 2 at a time just to maximize, the advantage of all the travel and spending all the resources. So we were there the next day, and it was obviously a die-off reaction, a Herxheimer reaction. And we did additional hydration. We did some IV vitamin therapy, high-dose IV vitamin C. We did additional binders. We kept him happy. We watched, relaxing TV shows that would just make him happy and laugh. And it actually took 2 weeks with Brian back in the wheelchair But after the 2 weeks, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel. We saw tremendous improvements, and this is called as a baseline shift. Okay. The improvements that we saw were Brian was now able to walk better. He was able to climb the stairs better. He was able to get in and out of the tub, get in and out of bed better because the pain had lessened. Brian had not been able to do that. You know, I had been carrying him on my back to go up and down the stairs, to go from the bedroom to the bathroom, you know, or just picking him up and just carrying him. When I was alone, of course, you know, when Brian's dad was home, he would just pick him up and take him to the bath. But for myself, I'm quite petite, as those of you who've met me know. So I would have to, you know, carry him on my back. But thankfully, those days are behind us. But this was just one example to illustrate what a die-off and Herxheimer reaction can be, right? Now, let me tell you what we did. I believe in powering through die-off reaction, especially once it was confirmed by my practitioner that this is indeed, you know, die-off. I mean, it was, right? It happened a couple hours after the 6 drops of cryptolepis. So what we did was we stayed on the full protocol, but cryptolepis, which was obviously the culprit, we reduced that to 1 drop. Okay, and we stayed on that 1 drop once a day, just so that the immune system is supported with the crypto and the body is getting used to the cryptolepis. Okay, so for 2 weeks, we just, you know, powered through that. We kept up all the things that I mentioned, the binders, the hydration. Of course, we didn't do IV therapy every single day, but we did keep up with the rest and the keeping him happy and hydration. We also did hemp oil. We did some valerian, some lemon balm to calm the aggression down, and it all worked out really well. Then after 2 weeks, when we started seeing this slow improvement, that's when I started ramping up on the cryptolepis, because I saw the baseline shift, things that he couldn't do before. I saw the improvement, so we knew, you know, we were on the right track. And then eventually, I think it took about a month for me to build up to 10 drops. 6 drops, he did good. So then I said, I'm going to go up to 10. It seems to be really helping him. So we went up to 10 drops 3 times a day. And then, you know, he just sailed through it. So this can pretty much be with any herbal blend or any single herb that, you know, a patient is trying and starting. So now let's take a deep breath, little pause, because very important to understand that this is just a die-off reaction. Getting panicky, getting scared is not going to help. What is really going to help is to understand that this is fully reversible. And fairly quickly too, actually, right? So let's get right into it. You know, especially for parents watching their children go through die-off reactions, it is fully reversible with the right strategies. Feel free to call the office to schedule a quick, you know, a brief 15-minute Zoom appointment. We will problem solve, we will strategize, and we will customize if you want. If not, watch this video and gain some insight, and you know, you can handle it yourselves. I always say that my patients and the parents of children on the spectrum that I have in my practice are, of course, you know, other than being extended members of my family, that's how I look upon everyone as belonging to the BioNexus extended family in 73 countries now. But what you are also is you are, you know, physician assistants. So I need your assistance, I need your support, and I need you to understand that this can be handled completely. Okay, so let me get back to the case studies. Actually, I took a little bit of a detour. Well, that's what happens when there's years and years of personal and professional experience, you know, in dealing with die-off reactions. But let's get back on track a little bit. So remember the case study I mentioned where there was excessive urination. Teachers in school were complaining about excessive urination as well as aggressiveness. Mom and dad were complaining about separation anxiety. Now think about this, right? There was a sudden onset. After a couple of days of school, there was a sudden onset of these behaviors. And when you think about these three symptoms, okay, excessive urination, aggressiveness, separation anxiety. I believe mom also mentioned that the focus, concentration, attention in school had reduced as well. So all of these are your classic symptoms of PANS. PANS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndromes, used to be called as pandas. Right? PANDAS was a pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. Now, what happens when a child is exposed to strep? Especially children with autism. Many children with autism in my practice, I think it's over 95%. Children in my practice with autism have underlying comorbid issues, pandas type issues. And when you see something arise like this, all of a sudden, you know, the common variable in all of these for most of the parents, you know, reporting was school started, that they started going to school. Now, my experience has been that, you know, in a special needs classroom, there can be a cesspool of microbes. Some parents are aware of pandas, other parents are not so much aware, some teachers as well are not aware. So any kind of symptoms, you know, are just lumped under the autism behaviors umbrella. And that's not necessarily true, is it? Because, you know, things like studies have shown that things like stims can actually be motor tics or involuntary movements that are associated with PANS. And many children exhibit those. So separation anxiety, frequency of urination, aggressiveness, sudden onset of OCD, sudden onset of morbid thoughts. One parent actually reported that the child had started having a lot of morbid thoughts around death and dying. Am I going to die? Are you going to die, mom? So this was a high functioning child with autism and was able to speak in small sentences. That improvement we had already seen. So, you know, here is the case where you have a child who's been on the BioNexus protocol, has already started talking, body is used to the protocol. And here we go, you know, I get a message from mom saying that, oh, he's having a really bad reaction to the protocol. And I look at the notes, I'm like, you know, this child has been making wonderful strides. Let's see, you know, what exactly happened. And long story short, it was a completely inaccurate assumption. The child has been on the protocol for months, full doses and everything, has shown tremendous improvement. So how can you assume it is the protocol? Now, because the parents assumed it's a protocol, they did not investigate further. In fact, mom was researching melatonin. I'm sorry, but this is, you know, very important to understand that please don't make the false assumption or jump to the conclusion, hey, it's always the protocol. You have to look outside the box. I think looking outside the box was what brought you to BioNexus already, right? Anyways, because you were not willing to accept the diagnosis of autism. You wanted to explore to see if there were any underlying root causes, which would mimic autism. So that's why you approach BioNexus. So please keep that scientific thinking and research ongoing as you try to recover and heal your child. Because again, back to school, exposure to microbes, it could be strep, it could be staph. Staph is also Marcons, which come in water damaged buildings. If you're exposed to, schools have been closed for a while due to the lockdown. Then additionally, it could be chemicals in the air, which were sprayed for antiviral protection, etc. So there is, so many different triggers. Mycoplasma would be one. We had one child who had similar flare-up symptoms, right? Mom erroneously assumed it was the anti-parasitic herbals. Not that bad of an assumption here, because anti-parasitic herbals can be quite powerful, but he had been cruising along on a couple drops for a few weeks. Now, you don't see a Herxheimer die-off reaction after a few weeks. Remember, I said it's usually after a couple of hours when you see. So again, with this child, a much older child, like I believe around 14 years of age, right? So I remember the name was Joshua. So Joshua at 14 was exhibiting these symptoms, and we were able to run some labs, excellent collaborating pediatrician. We ran the labs, and what did we find? Strep was fine, strep was normal. The Marcons had skyrocketed, as well as heavy-duty mycoplasma. Heavy-duty mycoplasma. So that was the reason. Joshua was also getting pretty severe headaches and nosebleeds, in addition to the other pan symptoms. So that's what it was, and we ended up, treating everything in collaboration. Now, when the infection levels are this high, and again, I spoke about this in my PANS flare-up podcast as well. And if the collaborating practitioner wants, the local collaborating practitioner wants to do a round of antibiotics, often that is okay as long as you stay on the full dose of, on the full BioNexus protocol, because that gives, a lot of gut support and protection and organ support. So that kind of helps to nullify the effects of the heavy-duty antibiotics that sometimes it might be okay to take, because if you're dealing with very high numbers of infections, then, we need to get some big guns in there, but for a very short period of time. So in my practice, what we do is we use predominantly herbal and natural medicine as the primary approach, and as the complementary or the alternative approach, we use conventional, right, pharmaceuticals if they are indicated by very high levels of infections. So this is, important to remember that not everything is a die-off. It's important to recognize what's die-off and what is a flare-up. And flare-up means re-exposure, and re-exposure means it becomes critically important to analyze or to discuss with a practitioner where the exposure is, so you can eliminate the triggers, correct? Because otherwise you will not see any improvements. So please remember this very important aspect. Just like I mentioned with what we did for Brian, we increased his binders. So if you're doing binder once a day, do it twice a day and so on. If you're doing twice a day, add an extra dose. Now, adding an extra dose of binder, right? Don't try to look for like, 1 hour before, 1 hour after supplements. Just add a binder in, right? Do the best you can. Even if you can have like a 20-minute gap between food and other supplements with the binder. So just add the binder in, just so that you have that additional support during a Herxheimer reaction, okay? Now here at this point, again, remember, I'm assuming that watching the video so far, you understand what a real Herxheimer reaction is, a real die-off reaction, okay? So upon that premise, I'm building up further. Binders, increase binders. You can increase relaxing and calming herbals like Calm 5, Lemon Balm, Valerian. Most of you already have dosages that I have given you. So just you can, by all means, you can increase those herbals to 4 or 5 times a day. Hemp oil would be one of those as well. Then look at anti-inflammatory blends. So that would be NS1, Neurological Support 1 blend, Neurological Support 2 blend. Then look at Mitochondrial Support blend. Okay, so Mito S blend would be something that would be useful. Remember to stay on the full protocol that you are on. So all of the nutritionals, the organ support, all of these are important to stay on. I'm just giving you the supplements that can be increased to several times a day as needed during a die-off reaction, right? Okay, then what to do with the offending quote unquote is actually helping antimicrobial, isn't it? Because in the long run, it's helping your body get rid of the unwanted infections. But right now, it seems to be the offending party. So what you do is you can do like what we did. We decided to stick with at least 1 drop once a day, right? And then power through it. You can eliminate the particular herbal that caused the Herxheimer reaction for a few days until things calm down. Herxheimer reactions can last anywhere from 2 days to 2 months, depending on the severity. And I will explain the 2-month deal in a minute, but let's finish what to do first. All right, then. I mentioned rest. I mentioned relaxation. Watch, TV shows, funny movies, take some time off work. If your child, if it's a child, keep him home. Let the school know that, other than autism, we are dealing with a lot of underlying medical issues. We had a 504 medical plan for my son. So legally, we had a lot of support in place, a lot of accommodations in place. So we would just, we just call up the school and let them know that we changed his treatment, something simple. Brian's doctor added a new medicine, a new supplement, and his body is going to take some time to adjust to the new dosage or to adjust to the new supplement. And he is not feeling well today, so I'm going to keep him home. So that is something, that is a reality that you have to accept. Many parents I know go through a lot of hardship taking care of a special needs child. And, when comes the morning, knowing that your child would be properly looked after at school, is getting a good, education as much as possible at school, is meeting friends, they actually look forward to that. They look forward to having a couple quiet hours at home because there's so much to do, isn't there? There's cooking, there's cleaning, there are special diets, there is, washing the clothes with borax, etc. So there's a lot. You might even have other children that you know, I have many parents that have babies that have to be looked after. But keeping all that in mind, right, empathizing with all of that, I would request you to please consider keeping the child at home during a Herxheimer die-off reaction, or even during a flare-up, like I've mentioned in the other video. Okay, so this is just important. You know, it's important to have a plan in place, help in place. Some of you might have friends, relatives, like myself. I had to hire babysitters to help, and I was lucky. My local high school had a work-study program for extra credit. And we had, you know, what students go for extra credit? The really high-ranking ones, right? Because they're looking to get into high-ranking schools after high school. So I was very lucky that my local high school had that program in place. And we had really bright young men and women who, men and women, right? Yes, I guess at that age, right? High school. But we had wonderful youngsters, high schoolers that would come and help us out at reasonable cost, because it was a work-study program. So that was a huge blessing for us. And, you know, they absolutely understood special needs, because, and it was quite surprising to me how many of these high schoolers actually had family members, cousins who had severe allergies or autism or, you know, some kind of a special need. And they were so kind and wonderful to Brian. So he would be home. Then the high schooler was allowed to leave school early, like, you know, around noonish, like around lunchtime, 11:30 or so. And they would come over and spend the rest of the day as part of the work-study program. So I would have someone here from 11:30 all the way to 3. And that allowed me a lot of flexibility, you know, for catching my breath, for, you know, getting some rest, as if Brian was at school. So that's one option, you know, if you have, if you can get some help. But you might have to keep your child home, or as an adult experiencing die-off reactions, you might have to stay home for a few days, right? So I remember Brian's dad and I, you know, not taking any kind of vacation days. I mean, I could make my own schedule, but I did have a full schedule at that point, so I don't like to cancel on my patients. But to avoid taking extensive vacations, or in the beginning, we hardly took any vacation, because most of the time was spent with travel for Brian's treatment, or, you know, having one of us having to take days off when he was going through a die-off reactions or flare-up, right? And, you know, don't hesitate to take things like lemon balm or Calm5 or hemp oil for yourself. I mean, if you need to take the occasional ibuprofen when you're having to deal with the die-off reactions in your child, just to be able to take care of yourself as well. That's very important. You know, caregivers are mostly mothers. Of course, there are wonderful fathers who are amazing caregivers to their children as well. In fact, one of my podcasts was with a local father, Doug, who, you know, who's been an absolute pillar of support, not only for his daughter, but also for the local community here. So there are wonderful dads out there as well. But so, you know, broadly speaking, caregivers, there's grandmothers, grandfathers who help out as well. Caregivers need to take care of themselves, all right? You guys are very, very important part of the patient's life, husbands, brothers, sisters, other family members. So make sure that you're being kind to yourself as well, right? Especially mothers, because mothers are givers. We tend to give so much of ourselves to the family that we often put ourselves on the back burner. So, you know, go ahead and do some calming herbs for yourself. take a good multivitamin, right? All natural, whole food based multivitamin. Nap when your child is napping. Get some rest when you can. Pop in the sauna if you have a sauna with your child. Some parents have hyperbaric chambers at home. Go in the chamber with your child. Just kind of, take some time for yourself. It's fine to put on a good TV show, have your child eating a nice snack, whatever he likes. And of course, within the BioNexus prescribed diet, please. And then grab yourself a nice hot cup of tea or, any favorite beverage. I usually drink non-caffeinated beverages, but if you need a little bit of a caffeine hit, by all means, just take care of yourself. Get good rest, get good sleep as much as possible, because what you are doing as a caregiver is of supreme importance. You are helping change the life of another human being, and that is amazing work. And it is important to look after yourself and be kind to yourself. Okay, well, caregivers are close to my heart, so I took a little detour, but we are, I think we're still on the right track, right? All right, so how to handle die-off. So that's pretty much it. So you will increase your binders, you will increase any kind of calming herbals, you will increase rest, relaxation. Additionally, what I found was in my practice, right? This is why I say, sometimes grabbing that 15-minute Zoom appointment is important, because I also found things like magnesium threonate, L-theanine, molybdenum, lithium orotate, sometimes even taurine, 5-HTP. These are some of the things that can be further customized to the child, right? Zinc would be another one. Sometimes copper zinc imbalance can be looked at. Sometimes, let's see, things like diatomaceous earth, in addition to the regular binder. So depending on what the situation is, right? If you are able to do that, discuss with it's fine if there's for those of you living abroad, it's fine if there is a local herbalist on board, if you want to kind of brainstorm, but it can help to brainstorm. Sometimes mom and dad can brainstorm amongst each other, or, as an adult, if you have another family member, but by all means, do a little bit of research into handling the die-off reaction, and it's very manageable. I promised, over-methylation, right? You have to be sure that you are not by mistake. If you're handling, many patients abroad, sometimes purchase items like probiotics and multivitamins locally. That's fine, fair enough, right? But sometimes by mistake, I have seen that, it is not the right kind of probiotics. So you experience in pretty severe die-off from the probiotics. Sometimes it is not the right kind of multivitamin, because it may contain methylated bees. And that again can cause a flare-up. That's over-methylation. And those of you who follow me know that I absolutely do not recommend methylation early on, not until the inflammatory markers or the inflammatory symptoms have calmed down to a great extent, because that can, over-methylation can absolutely backfire on you. So please keep that in mind as well. Now, I had promised, to talk about the 2 to 3 month long Herxheimer reaction, right? Just as I was beginning to explain. Well, I've had a few parents who came to me when their child on the spectrum was about 6, 7 years old already. Some even, 10, 11 year old by the time they heard about myself and my methodology, etc. And they tried everything. Most of the trendy things out there, they tried and did not help much. So that's where, they did the best they could for their child, and now they wanted to explore the antimicrobial protocols, the BioNexus protocols, and it gets very tiring. Years and years of trying new things one after another. So what these enthusiastic parents did, they did not go step by step. They added in the antimicrobials very fast. Some of them even added those in at full dosage. Just added in 10 drops 3 times a day, boom. That was a massive cytokine storm in the body, in the brain, and obviously massive die-off reactions. And the die-off reaction lasted for a good 2 to 3 months because a chronic inflammatory response, a chronic cytokine response takes a while. Okay. Now, if it is a PANS response along with a cytokine or inflammatory response, along with a mast cell histamine response, it's like a double or triple whammy on a child. And it takes a while to calm all of these things down. So it is always important to go step by step. One of my mentors had once mentioned to me that, Dr. Dashore, we need to go slow in order to heal fast. If you think about that, it'll make a lot of sense. Is building up the antimicrobials is important, so the body gets used to it, the body gets adjusted little by little. Eventually you will reach the full dose, and once you reach the full dose without any major mishaps, like trying to fast track treatment, without a mishap like that, that's when you will start to see a lot of good changes happening. A lot of gains is what I've heard from what I've seen as well in my practice, and personally with Brian as well. So please keep that in mind. Another thing that you should also keep in mind is the time frame, right? Now, these fast tracking parents were very understandably, it could even be an adult. Like, you've been sick for years, and now, oftentimes, more often than not, right, I get reports that the initial parts of the BioNexus protocol, the initial steps, have a wonderful beneficial effect for my patients. And this gives them a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of motivation, and I'm blessed with a lot of compliance from my patients as well because of the sustained continuous improvements they see. But what happens is, in spite of the advisories, the caution statements I have in your protocol about the antimicrobials, even about the anti-inflammatory herbals, right? Some of the anti-inflammatory blends can also have a little bit of a die-off effect because these are powerful herbals that can cross the blood-brain barrier. So if there are any infections, you will see some die-off there as well. So I always caution in the protocol that goes step by step, and you'll see that it's right there in the protocol for you to read. But fast tracking does happen because when you see benefit with the prior sections of the protocol, you're like, hey, I just want to go all guns blaring. I just want to plow through it. And plowing through is usually not a good idea for a body that has been dealing with, a lot of inflammation, infections, imbalance, immune dysfunction, endocrine, hormonal imbalances for so many years. I remember Dr. Charles Ray Jones, the absolutely fantastic, phenomenal Dr. Charles Ray Jones. He told us when the first time he saw Brian, he gave us a clinical diagnosis, and I'll do another podcast on labs and clinical diagnoses. But at that time, because of immune suppression that is caused by Lyme disease, and because of immune dysfunction that is caused by mold exposure and overall PANS autoimmunity. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the immune system, right? So the labs, which rely on the immune response, IgG, IgM, what are those? Those are antibodies. Who produces antibodies? Your immune system. Now, if the immune system is going through all of these issues, the antibodies are not going to be accurately produced, correct? So the lab results are very, very difficult. They're controversial, difficult to interpret. Sometimes you see nothing. So Dr. Jones, I did end up mentoring with him as well. And it was a tremendous learning experience with him, as well as with Dr. Jemsek, Dr. Shippen, all of my amazing mentors. So the thing that Dr. Jones said the first time he saw Brian, he gave us we had done the most expensive labs out there and we were still seeing nothing. He said, based on the history, Brian has Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, possibly ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and I would like to start treating, but he is 6.5 years old. It can take 3 to 4 years to be able to get rid of all of these co-infections. So that stayed with me. I did not have expectations of a miraculous cure, nothing of that sort. I knew I had to hunker down, put on my seatbelt, and just go for the ride. I mean, it was a wild ride in, 15, 16 different states in the United States, about so many different countries in the world that we had to visit these different specialists. And I ended up, mentoring with most of my favorite ones where I saw some results and I learned a little bit more. But that's how it is when you have any kind of a chronic illness. And when you have 2 to 3 chronic illnesses, you just have to understand that it takes time. There is no fast tracking, right? So, hey, a couple more things would be hydration. I mentioned hydration, right? For die-off reactions. Sorry, I'm just looking out, and I think we're getting the first snow of the season. So amazing. I'm just seeing some snowflakes falling right out my window. But sorry, I love nature. I just get distracted sometimes, but yeah. So couple things that I forgot about the die-off reaction was that during Herxheimer reactions, hydration, lemon water, then sauna, if you have any sauna at home, great. Additionally, what else? Dry brushing, rebounding, sensory activities like sensory proprioceptive and vestibular activities are very calming for children. Sensory proprioceptive activities are calming for adults as well. Rebounding can help with additional detoxification, similar to lemon water. Don't start drinking any detox teas and what have you, right? Relaxing teas are fine. One very, 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 very important point is make sure that you're having a bowel movement every day. Oftentimes, the only thing that is missing from the patient's protocol that is causing a die-off reaction is constipation. So you need to use, supplements like magnesium, magnesium natural calm powder. Then there is oxymag or oxy powder. There is milk of magnesia. What else? Colon clear. There is also Ayurvedic triphala that can be used. Psyllium husk can be used. Prune juice, prunes per se. Eating high fiber foods. One of my favorites is carrots and celery. That is very helpful. So look for natural options to make sure that you are not constipated. In fact, if you're having an extra bowel movement a day, that's fantastic. That is another thing that can help with die off. So if you're increasing the binder, just make sure that you increase your bowel support so you can eliminate at least a couple times a day. So, right? I think another deep breath. Let me see. Thinking. Yeah, I think I have covered pretty much everything what to do with Herxheimer reactions. And I'm going to stop right here. I don't like to make videos that are too long, but listen, if you are tuning in today, thank you very much for watching this podcast. And I would like to request you to please subscribe to this channel. People watch, and then with busy lives, they actually forget to subscribe. Subscribing is important to make sure that this podcast rises up on the YouTube search as well. The more subscribers we have, the more views we have, so we can help get the message out to more people, as well as it keeps, I mentioned this before, it keeps all of us motivated here, because my staff members and myself, we all are happy to donate our time, paying it forward with this educational series that we have going with the BioNexus podcast. So please do subscribe, hit the subscribe button below, and you will be notified of any new podcasts that have been uploaded. I try to release one podcast every week. I'll try and increase the frequency if possible, maybe during the Christmas break or something. We'll try. And so great. I hope this has been useful, educational. I hope this has given you some clarity. Please keep the questions coming. I really look forward to reading questions. Some of them are just like genius, like it's so interesting. I love them. So by all means, keep the questions coming. And I will end here. I look forward to seeing you at the next podcast. Until then, please take good care of yourself and your loved ones. Namaste.
Thank you for joining Master Herbalist Dr. Jodie A. Dashore, Director of the BioNexus Health Clinic and BioNexus Herbals, on the BioNexus Health Podcast, where we explore and share information and stories about recovering and healing from chronic and environmental illnesses such as mold biotoxin illness, Lyme disease, autism spectrum disorder, fatigue, Crohn's and colitis, mast cell activation syndrome, PANS, and more. Please help us grow our message by subscribing to our podcast channel and sharing the podcast on your social networks. For more information, visit bionexushealth.com.
Information within this video, audio, or text, collectively known as the podcast, has not been reviewed by the FDA. Nothing within the podcast is intended as or should be construed as medical advice. Information is for general informational and educational purposes only. Consumers of the podcast should consult with their healthcare practitioners for medical recommendations. Seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider. Do not disregard the advice of a healthcare provider based on any information from the podcast. The information within the podcast may contain information concerning dietary supplements or over-the-counter products that are not drugs. Our dietary supplement products are not intended for use as a means to cure, treat, prevent, diagnose, or mitigate any disease or other medical or abnormal condition.